All right, let's get rocking and rolling. Oh, where's my? Yeah. All right. The House Committee on Economic Development and Small Business will come to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chair Hoskins.
Here.
Representatives Grant. President Witsit. Neely.
Here. Here.
Neely. Liberati.
Here.
Kafia.
Here.
Barhat. Miller.
Here.
Tisdale.
Here.
Van Workum.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Roth.
Here.
St. Germain.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, just very quickly, on the agenda was Senate Bills 129 through 132, but I have pulled them. It's like some of the parties still need to talk a little bit about them, so hopefully we'll be able to bring them back at the next committee meeting. But today we have on the docket Senate Bill 289 from State Senator Jeremy Moss, and it's like he is here to present his bills, along with Jared Fleischer from Rocket Mortgage. Good morning to both of you, and whenever you are ready, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the vice chairs and members of the committee. I appreciate your willingness to entertain our Senate bill here, dealing with the very popular and successful transformational brownfields program. And our local communities throughout Michigan are excited that we're making updates to this creative program. There is no other economic development program that is designed for or capable of supporting brownfield redevelopment of this scale, magnitude, and impact. This program is specifically designed, and it specifically defines these plans as ones that will have a transformational impact on local economic development and community revitalization based on the extent of brownfield redevelopment, growth in population, commercial activity, and employment that will result from the plan. The plan, unless granted a waiver, must be a mixed-use development project containing a combination of retail, office, residential, hotel uses, and more. Unlike other programs that have been highly scrutinized and debated through this legislature, transformational brownfields are not provided any upfront cash to support its projects. Instead, it builds upon the highly successful and popular brownfield tax increment financing to make it work for the largest and most impactful projects. Transformational brownfield plans work by reinvesting a portion of the new tax revenues from a completed project back into the project in order to make the redevelopment financially feasible. Thus, the program requires construction, development, and employment on site before any incentive actually takes place. There must be tangible economic and community revitalization results first for the project to benefit from the tax capture. Otherwise, there's nothing to capture. Without this program, many brownfield sites remain obsolete, contaminated, and vacant. And with a transformational brownfield plan, local and state government receive new tax revenue that otherwise would not be generated. This program can be right-sized to fit the needs of diverse communities. A geographic distribution plan is required, balancing the needs of municipalities of different sizes and geographic areas. And you will hear today from local elected officials around the state who want to participate in this program. And I will note that when this program was first being developed and brought through the legislature years ago, I worked to add a local sign-off first in the form of a local resolution that has to be passed by the local governing unit to ensure that it receives local buy-in, local public support first. And these local leaders who you'll hear from are excited about this opportunity, but changes in the program need to be made to deliver a wider range of assets and amenities that communities need for it to be successful. So some of the changes that we're making here today include raising the current limit on what can be captured from 40 million to 80 million, and changing the geographic distribution so smaller and mid-sized communities have a greater opportunity to participate. The Senate passed an amendment requiring around one-third of the plans to be in communities with populations of 100,000 or less. This is a tool in our toolbox that works to grow our population, retain and attract talent, and build the kind of vibrant locations that people want to live in, while most importantly, including input from local communities. So appreciate the consideration. Jared Fleischer is here to have a few slides on how this program has had an impact so far and why we want to continue the lifeline of this program. So I'll turn it over to Jared.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Jared Fleischer, and I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs for the Rock family of companies, Mr. Dan Gilbert's family of companies. And I have a little bit of deja vu being here because it was in this very room 7 years ago when the first hearing was held on the original transformation of brownfield bills. And I actually just had flashbacks of driving up. Mr. Gilbert testified that morning, and he was always iterating until the very end. And I distinctly remember driving up, and he's like, I want to talk about the talent piece. Go find out for me how many Michigan and Michigan State graduates that the state pays with our subsidy leave the state. Give me that information. I'm like, Dan, we're in Okemos. He testified in 20 minutes. But he was here. He testified. The bill was passed ultimately in May of 2017, so 6 years ago, and it was passed because of a statewide coalition that came together. And that coalition literally was from Monroe to Muskegon, because brownfields are everywhere in this state, and we didn't have the tool to help redevelop them. And everybody understood how important having vibrant communities is to growing our state, growing our population, attracting talent, as the senator said. So why am I here today? I'm here because the program was enacted. There was a cap put on it, as you see on the slide right here, of $40 million a year. That cap is about to be reached. It worked for us. It worked for our community. All of our partners across the state are now saying, we need to reauthorize it or else we're on the outside looking in. We were there together the first time. Can we be there together again for the extension? And we said, absolutely, we're all in for it. Our projects may be done. Your projects are equally important. We got Nicole Nystrom, the Energizer Bunny, to work on it, and here we are. So that's why we're here. The successful program has reached its cap. It needs to be extended, and there needs to be some changes made so it can work for communities across the state just like it did for Detroit. So what's a transformational brownfield? As the senator alluded to, just imagine in your community, that site, that large centrally located site, maybe it's abandoned mall like in Macomb County, the Lakeside Mall, or a mall that's certainly seen better days, an old paper mill, abandoned factory, or in case of Detroit, something like the Hudson site, abandoned and demolished, or in Grand Rapids here, the riverfront. The entire riverfront of Grand Rapids that I think is currently home to the Water and Sewerage Department and, could be home to a incredible redevelopment that'll grow the city, attract talent, and make it a destination for people all over the country. So transformational brownfield is that brownfield site in your community that's been vacant, abandoned, derelict for decades. No way to make it work. This is about making those sites come back to life. As the senator said, this is a program that's scaled to work for communities all across the state. If it's a project in Detroit, it's got to be at least $500 million. If it's a project in the Upper Peninsula, it just needs to be $15 million. It is scaled to work for communities across the state. And as the senator said, the locals have to designate it as transformational first, approve it first before it gets to the state. These are some examples of projects that have been supported. I mentioned the paper mill in Vicksburg. It was the company town built around the paper mill, abandoned, derelict, and through the Transformational Brownfield program, it's coming back as apartments, hotel, brewery, event space. In downtown Detroit, the Book Tower, 40 stories, one of the most significant historic buildings in Detroit, vacant for decades. Absolute, and it looked like something out of a nuclear winter, just as you see in that, picture, to the right. That's what it looked like. We removed 3,000 cubic yards of trash from that building and hazardous materials. No way to bring that building back to life, vacant for 20 years. It's about to reopen on June 8th as a beautiful set of apartments, event space, hotel, bringing vibrancy back to our community. And obviously, the Hudson site in downtown Detroit, the largest department store, the second largest department store in the world when it was opened, demolished, over 20 years ago, vacant, just a hole in the heart of the city for 20 years, coming back to life as this extraordinary development. We're here because TBP worked for us, it worked for Vicksburg, it needs to now work for Grand Rapids, it needs to work for Pontiac, it needs to work for Saginaw, it needs to work for Macomb, it needs to work for the Upper Peninsula. So how does it work? How does it work? As a senator said, it builds on Act 381, the traditional brownfield law, okay? It's probably the most commonly used redevelopment tool in the state of Michigan, the brownfield TIF, Act 381. So what we did in 2017, and we need to continue doing through this legislation, is build on that. The Brownfield Act is about local taxes, local tax increment financing. So there's an empty site, abandoned factory generates no tax revenue, right? Generates nothing. Okay? If it's redeveloped, it generates local property taxes, sales tax, income tax, utility users tax, all these new revenues, right? But if we can't redevelop it, none of that exists. So the logic of the Brownfield Act is let's take some of these new revenues, reinvest them back into the project to make the economics work. We got a win-win. There were no tax revenues before. Now we get part of the tax revenues. That's better than nothing. And the community gets a project. Instead of a contaminated site, an eyesore, the community gets a project. In the case of transformational brownfield, a transformational project. So traditional brownfield TIF, as it existed before 2017, was just about local property taxes. But that wasn't enough to support the largest and most challenging projects. How do we know that? Because the site's empty still, been empty for 20 years, 30 years. If the existing tool was powerful enough to make those sites come back to life, they wouldn't still be empty. So what MyThrive said in 2017 here in this committee room is, you know what? The state of Michigan has a role to play in community development. So if the locals are putting skin in the game, the state's going to come and put skin in the game too in terms of tax increment financing with the state tax dollars that are generated from these projects. The locals are contributing back some of their portion of new taxes. Not enough, and also it's all in the locals. Transformational Brownfield says the state's going to come in for these most significant projects and participate in making them possible and in generating transformational community benefits. It's always been bipartisan because, as the senator said, there's no money up front. It's 100% performance-based. You don't build it, you don't get anything. It's probably the most accountable piece of economic development legislation ever developed because every project is rigorously underwritten. So it's not just, hey, I need X dollars to make it possible, give me X dollars over time. It's we're going to do a rigorous financial analysis of your project. What are the costs to clean it up? What are the costs to redevelop it? What revenues does it generate? What's your gap? And you're only authorized to capture the incremental taxes up to that gap. Not a penny more, not a year longer. That's how it's need-based, performance-based, and it's smart policy because, again, we had Mayor Duggan up here, Democratic Mayor of Detroit, saying, you're going to hear from Mayor Bliss, you're going to hear from Mayor Greimel. No secret, they're Democrats. But I'm going to read you a quote from Jack Brandenburg about as conservative a Republican as you're ever going to find. No offense. With 4 exceptions. He said right here, lately some of my conservative friends have asked me why I support transformational brownfield economic development bills. My thinking is this, right now the state's getting 100% of nothing from these sites. By passing this legislation, we're going to get 50% of something. This is good legislation. That comes from a conservative who's owned his own business for 37 years. It's always been bipartisan, passed in 17 with 80 votes in this House, 85 votes in the House, 30 votes in the Senate. What does SB 289 do? It does 3 things. Reauthorizes the program. We've hit the cap, so Grand Rapids is on the outside looking in, Macomb, Saginaw, Pontiac, Upper Peninsula. It reauthorizes it, another $40 million. Probably the most important thing, as I look around this room, and the senator alluded to this, it ensures geographic equity. I don't even mean to repeat the senator, but a third of projects have to be in small communities, less than 100,000. A third have to be in communities between 100,000 and 225,000. It means Grand Rapids, as the senator said to me this morning, Grand Rapids doesn't compete with Detroit. Pontiac doesn't compete with Grand Rapids. The Upper Peninsula doesn't compete with Grand Rapids. We've tiered it and mandated that there's projects in each of these tiers. Final thing, I'm going to stop talking, is it updates the program. This is really, really important to understand because it's a key component of the bill. When this was enacted in 2017, you guys, everybody remembers, we're trying to get Amazon here in that era, right? It was all about offices, you know, big office-centric developments. And that's how the TBP program was structured back in 2017. It was really about, in terms of the state's participation and what went into the formula for reinvesting in a project, it was based on jobs, and in particular office jobs. That's what the formula rewarded. Well, the world has changed since COVID, and you know, our offices are empty. We're certainly not building new offices. What do communities need? They need live, play developments. They need housing, and they need amenities that attract talent, retain talent. Live, play. If you think about a development, you know, think about something with shopping, dining, hospitality, nightlife. That generates sales tax. Under the law as it previously exists, none of that goes into the formula. So the law doesn't support live, play developments. Again, if your development, like they're trying to do in Grand Rapids, Pontiac, has shopping, dining, entertainment, nightlife, everything you want to build a vibrant community, none of that goes into the formula because it was built for offices and office jobs. Again, the world has changed. The law needs to change. This allows sales and use taxes to go into the formula so the program can support these live, play developments. It doesn't favor some developments, disfavor others. But I want to reiterate this. It's just a formula. It doesn't actually capture sales and use tax dollars. There's no impact on the school aid fund. The schools have blessed, all good. They agree, they get it. It's just having the formula be the right formula to support the kinds of developments that communities need today. Live, play. Last thing I'm going to say, why is it so important? The senator said this, but I just want to reiterate this. I don't think there's anybody here that's not committed to growing the state of Michigan. We need more people in the state. We need more educated folks in the state. The slide on the right is data that just came out a week ago. The folks who are moving in this country are educated, primarily young folks. Where are they going? This is both an opportunity, it's like an existential situation here. They're leaving the coasts. They're leaving high-priced LA, San Francisco, New York. They're going to your second and third tier cities, okay, that are highly amenitized, that offer a really high quality of life. They're not yet coming to Michigan, but they're going to places that look like what we could look like if we keep doing this. This is truly about attracting and retaining talent. That's how we grow the state. And talent's the secret sauce. If you have an attractive place where people want to live, business is then going to come. How did Austin become a juggernaut? Denver become a juggernaut? Nashville become a juggernaut? Because they created a place where people wanted to live, wanted to come, and then business followed talent. So this is not just about phenomenal development in Grand Rapids. It's about how that adds up to a big picture of what our state needs to thrive. So I appreciate your time and happy to answer any questions.
All right, do we have any questions from members of the committee? Representative Kofia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you, Senator. So I was thinking about, I see Traverse Connect, which is in my district, the 103 in Traverse City, Leelanau County area, is in support of this bill. But I was curious with the being able to compete at different tiers, how many municipalities are there in Michigan under 100,000? Like how many people will be competing for this within that bracket? You say small. For us, you know, Traverse City's 14,000 people. So I'm trying to like orient towards the playing field for people in the under 100,000.
It's a great question. So the way the law was before is it said 35% of all projects had to be in communities under 225,000. So this is a dramatic, it's an improvement. It's an improvement to say that actually now 66%, really doubling it of projects have to be in communities under 225,000, and a separate tier for the smallest communities. Here's what I'll say. The nature of the program is a project that's transformational in Munising, as you're going to hear, is smaller than a project that's transformational in Grand Rapids. So a project may need $500,000 in tax reimbursement a year to be viable, maybe less in northern Michigan as compared to a multiple of that in Grand Rapids, for example, just given the size of the project. So if you talk to the MEDC, they will tell you that they anticipate being able to do many, many small projects because of that, mathematical fact. So I would candidly suggest this. I think our collective challenge is not the capacity of the program. It's how do we educate folks in other communities in northern Michigan to take advantage of it. Actually, I'm going up to Traverse City to talk to Traverse Connect July 14th to do exactly that, because northern Michigan should take advantage of it. I think the biggest barrier is not capacity, but education.
And I would just add, as we worked through these changes in the Senate, your point was very well taken among colleagues in the Senate. It ensures that a Grand Rapids doesn't compete with a Traverse City or even smaller communities. It pulls out Grand Rapids, Ann Arbor, Warren, those kind of large cities, not as large as Detroit, on a different tier, so that we can ensure that smaller communities have the same opportunities to participate in the program. You will hear in testimony from the mayor of Grand Rapids and the mayor of Pontiac, and they're in two separate tiers. Before this breakdown, which was amended in the Senate, it really would have helped. It would have caused them to compete in the same pool.
Thank you, and I definitely appreciate it, and that it's an improvement. I was just looking for still the total number of municipalities potentially who would be under that 100,000. So if that's something we could follow up on.
Yeah.
Broadly supportive of this, and I appreciate it. Just I like to know a little more detail.
We can get that to you.
All right. Thank you, Representative. Representative Van Workum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's kind of a follow-up to that line of questioning. What if there's no small projects? You say that it's required to do 38% in these types. Does that prevent the bigger ones, or do they just get to qualify then up to the potentially 80 million? If there are none of these projects, and I think you said the language requires, does that then prevent the large ones from happening? Give me some scenarios, I guess, of if it is done to 80, no small communities apply for these because they don't have the developers, but Detroit and Grand Rapids continue to apply for it. Would they then, because of the scaling system, qualify for all of it?
It's a great question, and it's my fault because I spoke imprecisely. The language of the statute says first, subject to the receipt of qualified plans.
So if you're saying if no small communities do it, then Detroit and Grand Rapids would qualify then for, I think it's 5 projects a year, or are you changing 5 projects?
No, that is not being changed.
That is still the same.
Yes,
So of the 5 projects, okay, so I think it's important for committee members to know there's only going to be still 5 projects that are approved, and then based on whether small ones apply or not.
You're 100% right. So there's 2 different, back in 2017, geographic equity was a concern. That's why we said no more than, 5 projects in any given municipality. We've strengthened that by adding the, overall tiering. But everything that you said is true. If there are no small projects, then, because it's subject to the receipt of qualified applications, the math resets, and there will be, no irrational cap on Grand Rapids. But there is the longstanding limitation on how many projects any one community can get in the interest of geographic equity.
But you're going to hear in this testimony, in this committee hearing, from communities in that tier who do want to participate in this program.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I apologize. I don't know who else testifying
Yeah, no,
today, but
I'm here to preview it.
I had do you guys know? It's my understanding that this program was like last year was the first time that all 5 projects were used. Do you guys have a number of how many times this was actually used since it's been in place since 2017, I believe you said?
There are 3 projects that have made all the way through the process. So that's Vicksburg, that's Bedrock Detroit, which is the Hudson's and the Book Tower, and then most recently, what they call the District Project, which is the redevelopment of the area around the University of Michigan Center for Innovation, also in Detroit. There are a number of projects that have been given the invitation to apply and are working their way through the process. You'll hear from several of them today, from the mayor of Grand Rapids, where there's multiple projects, Munising, Shannon Morgan is here. Their project is very far advanced, but not yet over the finish line, so not yet fully approved. You'll hear from Mayor Grimel of Pontiac. They are in the process. So 3 that have made their way all the way through the process, many that are in process or close to being done, but we need the cap to be lifted in order for that pipeline to be accommodated.
All right. Anything else, Representative? Yeah. Okay.
Come up with something if you'd like.
Well, I mean, I'm not answering the question, so you can go ahead. Any other questions from committee members? Oh, Representative Roth.
Thank you for the testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Use taxes. What kind of use taxes are we applying or getting? What are we? I'm just curious about those.
Yeah, the main reason the use tax is in there, it's typically grouped with the sales tax, but the tax technically on hotels or hospitality is a use tax, not a sales tax. So that'll be the main component, or the main source of the use tax.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right. Anyone else? All right, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your testimony this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we will have Mayor Tim Grimel from Pontiac.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, members of the committee. It's great to have an opportunity to be with you, albeit virtually. I wanted to testify in strong support of this legislation, and I want to thank Senator Moss for his leadership in bringing this legislation forward. Jared spoke and said, I think very astutely, that this is a bipartisan or nonpartisan legislative initiative, and that's very true. And the reason for that is that the problems that it seeks to address are not partisan in nature. We have communities all across the state that have been ravaged by deindustrialization, that have been ravaged by demographic shifts, either from people moving from more rural communities to larger urban areas. But we've also had people moving out of urban areas to suburban areas. And these changes that have come about in the past 40 or 50 years have been really devastating to a lot of communities all across the state. These bills are about really ramping up the state's commitment to rejuvenate older cities, older communities that have been hit by these very difficult trends and developments in recent decades. This is legislation that is hugely helpful and powerful in redeveloping derelict sites, derelict properties that otherwise would probably never be developed, or if there was any hope of developing them, it would be at enormous expense to local communities. These, as I said, typically are older communities. They're almost always low-income communities. They're oftentimes communities of color. And so this legislation is about the state really committing resources to ensuring that communities have a fighting chance to get back on their own 2 feet. And importantly, when I say that it's about the state committing resources, these are resources that the state would otherwise never even have, because in the absence of this redevelopment, the state would never even realize these tax dollars. But the principle here is pretty simple, which is if these redevelopments happen, then any tax dollars realized by the state as a result of that redevelopment will be available to reinvest in that project. And again, other than these tax incentives, without these tax incentives, those redevelopments would never happen. So the state is simply reinvesting tax revenues that it would never have had otherwise into these developments. And we have a project that is waiting to get off the ground here in Pontiac. This legislation will be immensely helpful to that project. But this isn't just about Pontiac. When I was in the state legislature, I was a champion of the legislation that passed at that time, even though my community of Pontiac was not in line to see any of those developments. This is really about making sure that all communities in the state will be able to benefit from this powerful tool to redevelop properties that otherwise would never be redeveloped. And again, I want to thank the committee for the opportunity to be with you today, and I want to thank Senator Moss again for his leadership in bringing this legislation forward.
All right, thank you, Mayor Greimel. Are there any questions for the mayor? All right, looks like we don't have any questions. Thank you so much for your testimony this morning.
Thank you.
All right, next we will have Mayor Rosalind Bliss from the City of Grand Rapids.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Hoskins and committee members. I'm really delighted to be joining you today virtually. So thank you for allowing me to do that. And I want to just thank Senator Moss for really being a leader on this. And then also I'm happy to join my colleague, Mayor Greimel, and other mayors throughout the state talking about how important this tool is. Jared did a fantastic job of walking you through kind of the history and how valuable this tool is. So I'll just add a few things. One, Grand Rapids is supportive of this bill. We have a lot of work that we are doing here in Grand Rapids to continue the momentum and to grow our city. But it's not just about cities our size. As Mayor Greimel said, this is a tool that can be used throughout the state in cities all over. We do have a significant project here in our city right along the riverfront. Jared, thank you for including that image in your PowerPoint. I appreciate that. And honestly, with the scope and size of this project and also the growing cost of development, we need tools like this in order to get projects like this over the finish line. It is a unique tool, and you've already heard all the specifics about it, but it really does create an opportunity for cities to redevelop projects that would never get off the ground. So I'm excited to be here today to support it. As I said, it would be supportive of our project, but also cities all over. As a UPer, I know that there's some projects in the UP waiting for tools like this in order to support their projects. And what I really appreciate about the changes to the legislation and what's before us today is that it is a tool that will support the kind of mixed use, vibrant developments that we need in cities. We know more and more that if we're going to be a state with a growing population, we have to invest in cities, and we have to have cities and places where people want to live and raise their families. And this tool will allow us to do that. So again, I'm just here to express my strong support and answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you, Mayor Bliss. Are there any questions from committee members for Mayor Bliss? All right, looks like there are no questions. Thank you so much for your testimony this morning. All right, next we will have Shannon Morgan and Jill Ferrari from Renovare Development.
I apologize, my partner Jill Ferrari could not make it this morning, but I wanted to thank Chair and Committee for having me. My name is Shanna Morgan, and I'm Managing Partner of Renovare Development. We are a woman-owned social impact development company working statewide on transformational projects that serve deep community need. And we're here to talk to you today about the Munising Marketplace. We have been working in partnership with the Alger County Land Bank in Munising for 3 years to develop a scattered site transformational project in the home of the Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore. As you probably know, over the last 7 years, Munising has become the poster child for the Pure Michigan campaign, and thus has seen a 70% increase in visitorship. This visitorship has impacted the community, of which they have not seen any new housing in over 40 years. They have local small businesses that want to grow but simply cannot because of the lack of housing, and community-centric commercial that can serve their local community. We have been programming a 3-story mixed-use building that will house Michigan Works and create a workforce development center that will house all the workforce agencies in the UP, and will collaborate with the local DDA to connect with direct talent into the local business. We also have an early child care facility and daycare facility in the building. We have a local market, and we have 39 units of workforce housing. Along with that, in the scattered site, rural transformational, we are redeveloping a historic fire hall located at the epicenter of the town's main street into a micro brewery accelerator. This brewery will have a rooftop overlooking the Pictured Rock boat cruises and Lake Superior. Munising is a town of 2,300 people. We have received our invitation to apply. These tools simply help this project, almost 3 years in, reach the finish line. The closest housing for any workforce in Munising is over 40 miles away. So the transformational impact to this community will be absolutely, it will have a lot of impact for all the local businesses. We are working in partnership with Invest UP, the local DDA, the city, and the county to move this project forward. So want to thank you for considering this very, very important legislation. We hope that it moves forward and, helps to bridge the gap in this project to, move us to development. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Any questions from committee members? All right. Thank you so much for your testimony this morning. All right. And next, looks like we have Jen Richterink from the Michigan Municipal League. No.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair and committee members. I'm Jen Richterink with the Michigan Municipal League, here to testify in support of Senate Bill 289. I know you've heard from a number of our members already this morning, but just here to talk about and express that support from our members that aren't here. And as you just heard from Ms. Morgan in talking about their project in Munising, this is a key element to get that project happen. That project has been in the works for a number of years, and finally we're at a point where we can see that and bring vital housing needed to Munising and the Upper Peninsula. So we very much appreciate the work that Senator Moss did back in the original iteration of bringing this program to life and having locals be at the table to be part of the conversation, since these economic development deals have such a huge impact on that local and regional economies. And I'm here to answer any questions if you need me to. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions from committee members? All right, Jen, thank you so much for your testimony. All right, it looks like that is all the testimony for this morning, unless I'm missing somebody. All right, I'm going to read in a number of cards. Everyone here is not wishing to speak. We'll start with Josh Lunger from the Grand Rapids Chamber in support of the bill. Rusty Merchant on behalf of Lakeshore Advantage in support of the bill. Mayor Brian Burnett of the City of Rochester Hills in support of the bill. Mayor Michael Taylor and Mark Vanderpool of the City of Sterling Heights in support of the bill. Veronica Horn from the Saginaw Chamber of Commerce in support of the bill. Greg Dobson from AVB in support of the bill. Melissa Fish from Southwest Michigan First in support of the bill. Lansing Area Economic Partnership in support of the bill. Don Crandall from the Home Builders Association of Michigan in support of the bill. The Mackinac Center in opposition to the bill, changing it up a little bit there. Rusty Merchant on behalf of Grand Action 2.0 in support of the bill. Rusty Merchant and Kate Skaggs on behalf of Economic Development Leaders of Michigan in support of the bill. Henry Wolf of Northern Michigan Chamber Alliance in support of the bill. Henry Wolf on behalf of Traverse Connect in support of the bill. Frank Foster on behalf of Business Leaders of Michigan in support of the bill. Zach Morris from Market Van Buren is in support of the bill. Rob Cleveland from Cornerstone Alliance in support of the bill. Luke Bonner from Bonner Advisory Group in support of the bill. And Joanne Crary from Saginaw Future in support of the bill. Representative Liberati moves to approve minutes from the May 16th meeting. Without objection, so ordered. Representative Grant moves to excuse absent members. Without objection, so ordered. There being no further business before the committee will stand adjourned.